Right, boys, this is a brief introduction to the subjunctive. This is the last bit of grammar that we're going to meet this year. Once you get your head around it, it's fairly straightforward. It's not as weird as the perfect passive participle, but you just have to make sure that you get all this information down, and it will make sense. So, the first thing that we need to realise is that every verb has a mood. Okay, now it's not something we've ever talked about before because all the verbs we've met so far, no matter what tense they've been, have been in something called the indicative mood. And the indicative mood is basically just like the normal mood. So whether you've got perfect tense, imperfect tense, pluperfect tense, future tense, it's all just indicative. And it just means that there's nothing weird about those verbs. Now, don't worry, you don't have to learn all those tenses in completely new moods. There's just a couple of tenses that we're going to meet where the mood has changed. So, what we really mean by mood is how is the verb being used within a sentence. So, because so far we've only ever had normal sentences with nothing weird going on, all our verbs have been in this normal indicative mood. Another mood is the subjunctive, okay? And you may have met it in modern languages because they do have it. And the subjunctive, most of the time, is used when you are describing something that hasn't definitely happened, so it maybe has a potential to happen. So, for example, in English, you might say, if I were happy, I would go and play outside. And that sentence there, none of those things have actually happened. The suggestion there is that that person isn't happy and that they're not going to go outside. So in English, the words were and would are often used to express the subjunctive, to express this idea of something that has a potential to happen, but that hasn't definitely happened. The subjunctive in Latin is fairly straightforward in how it looks and it's quite easy to spot. And again, the subjunctive is used for particular types of sentences and most of the time to describe things that haven't definitely happened. So far we understand there are different moods for verbs. We've only ever met the indicative mood, and today we're going to meet this strange subjunctive mood. I'll show you what it looks like. So the indicative pluperfect I've put on the left-hand side here. So that's our normal pluperfect endings. Eram, eras, erat, eramos, eratis, erant. Okay, so we should recognise those endings to mean I had done something, you had done something, etc. On the right-hand side is the pluperfect in the subjunctive mood. Okay, so the endings do look different. Handily, you've still got m, s, t, mus, tis, unt on the end. So you're able to recognise which person is doing the action very easily because they're the same as the normal pluperfect endings. But obviously you don't have this era bit before the end. Instead you have this strange isse. Okay, so the subjunctive pluperfect is just the sound isse plus mst, mus, tis, unt, so your normal person endings. Okay, now the strange thing about them, but kind of also makes things a little bit easier, is you still translate this just like the normal pluperfect. So you're still translating it as I had done something, you had done something. So obviously the next question is, right, well, what is the point in having this subjunctive if it's translated exactly the same as the normal indicative pluperfect? Well, the first way in which this subjunctive is used, or at least the first way that we're going to meet, is that the subjunctive can change the meaning of other words. And the word that we're going to talk about today is come. Okay, so we know that come means with, usually, as written here. So we see that word in a sentence, we translate it as with. Usually it's followed by the ablative because we know the ablative is by, from, with, or in. What the subjunctive does is if you find a sentence that has come and the subjunctive, then the meaning of come changes from with to when. Okay, so what that means is if you see the word come plus one of these endings here, you're not translating it as with, you're translating it as when. And it is that simple. You're still translating those endings as had done something, just like you would with a ramarasa rat. But all that's happened is that because they're subjunctive, they've changed the meaning of this word come. Let's have a look at what I mean by this in some examples. So this first one here, cum modestus ad pontem advenisset, equus transire nolebat. So here you've got the pluperfect. You see it's got isse plus a t on the end. So it's going to be translated as he or she had arrived, because that's how you translate the pluperfect. But because it's subjunctive and not indicative, not a normal verb, the translation of this word come is not with, but when. So as you can see, the whole sentence is translated as when Modestus had arrived, so totally normal, just like the normal pluperfect. At the bridge, the horse did not want to cross. The second sentence, same thing again. So here you've got the isse, this time plus an unt, so you know that this is translated as they had prepared. And because it's subjunctive rather than indicative, the translation of come changes from with to when again. So when the slaves had prepared everything, the merchant led his friends into the dining room. So by the time you translated the sentence, it's not actually obvious that the Latin had a pluperfect subjunctive in there. But you've used that subjunctive to change the translation of the word come from with to when. It seems like a weird rule. It seems strange that the ending of a verb changes the translation of a completely different word. But that's all you really need to remember. You just have to stick with it and it works out. Okay, so let's have a look at exercise 3 where it says further examples. We'll do the first one together and then I'll give you a bit of time to do the other ones. So, cum rex exieset, salvius milites ad se vocavit. So you have exieset here. So the isse is inside there, so you know it's the pluperfect subjunctive. It's got a T on the end, so you know it's a he or a she. So that means we're translating come as when. So when the king had gone out, Salvius called the soldiers to him. Okay, so have a look at B, pause the video and see if you can figure out how you're going to translate this one. Okay, so B interfecissent, they had killed, is your pluperfect subjunctive there. Obviously, come you're translating as when. So when the gladiators had killed the lion, the spectators applauded. Okay, have a look at C. Again, pause the video, see if you can figure out the translation. Okay, so C, dedisset here. You've got the isse plus a T, so this one is he or she had given. The come there is going to be translated as when. So when the master had given these orders, the craftsmen returned to the palace. Okay, D, pause the video and have a go at that one. Okay, so this time the come's not at the start of the sentence, but it is there. And you've got the pluperfect subjunctive here. So the sisters, when they had entered the kitchen, began to wash the dirty wine cups. Don't worry if you struggle with those words, pocula, sorted out. Obviously, this is from a different textbook to the one that we have. I'm pretty sure the vocab isn't in there. But the main thing is that you've spotted the pluperfect subjunctive. Then at the bottom, here's a little recap of those endings. These ones only show you the third person singular and the third person plural, but you can see there they do look different from the normal pluperfect, from the pluperfect indicative. but the translation, as I say, is exactly the same. There are some irregular ones at the bottom there. So the pluperfect of to be was fuerat. We may have seen that briefly before. But the pluperfect subjunctive still makes sense. You've still got the isset there and isent there. And they've also included the verb I want. So waluerat, he had wanted. And again, the pluperfect subjunctives make sense. Isset and isent. Okay. So that's all I'm going to tell you for today. I don't want to give you a load of stuff to do on this. It's just a little introduction to what the subjunctive is and how it looks. But the main thing is that it's just like a sort of strange version of the verb which is used in particular circumstances. And as we go into next year and for GCSE, you'll meet more situations and more constructions in which the subjunctive is used. But for now, all you need to worry about is what happens when you have the subjunctive paired with the word come in a sentence. And the answer is, you translate it as when instead of with. Okay, any questions, boys, just drop me a message.